What is going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to another episode of Swoop Luke. In this episode, happens every year for the last maybe 2 years, I think, Pom, where I get the best in the absolute business because I know sweet F all about the draft, about the kids coming up, but I know that this is Pom's pretty much his Christmas Eve when it's draft or when it's before the draft nights. Pom, thank you for joining me today to talk about the pies and who we're sort of looking at.
I'm looking forward to it. We had fun last year. We nailed them as well last year, which
Yeah,
was
we
good.
did. Yep. Well, you
So
did. I just stood here and looked at the camera.
it's a team effort. Swoop, do you know what I mean? Like you've got a few players at your club who didn't touch the ball in the final, but they are grand final winners.
That's
So
true. That's
it
true.
all counts. It all counts.
Exactly right. We haven't caught up in a while, so I hope you're doing well. I hope those finals under your belt feels good. Finally.
Yeah, it does. I mean, usually this is my grand final, but
Yeah.
I've had some finals football, so this is kind of like dessert, really now.
But you still love it, and like I'll link all to your stuff down below. Like guys, if you're watching this and you want to know more about the draft and other teams and stuff, follow Pom. He's just literally the best at what he does on YouTube, on Footy Creator YouTube as well, second to none in my honest opinion. But look, let's get straight into it. So Collingwood, we hold a couple of picks. Our first pick being pick 19, but that'll change to somewhere 24, they reckon 23, 24 with academy picks. What are your feelings on what we're sort of drafting for? I feel like we're pretty much settled in a lot of the places. There's some areas that we could top up with general defenders maybe or key forwards as well. But what are your sort of inclinations?
Well, I mean, I think you'd probably say a key forward would probably be around that pick. There's a few
Yep.
around there. I think 20 where you are 19 is going to push back to
Yep.
the mid 20s. I think you're also in a hot quality position that, depending on what happens in the top 10, there is going to be a couple of sliders there. So I could see Collingwood being in that position where there may be players that are sliding where you're like, okay, we might not need him, but
Mm.
he is so much better than a project player. And then your second pick might be a need. So that could be interesting. But I mean, I think if I was a betting man, I think you want a key forward. I think that would be the first name that comes out of Collingwood's mighty, massive book.
No, and you're definitely right. Sometimes it's, you know, I think Ed Allen was a bit of a not a need but a want because he got slid down to pick. I think we had pick 19 or thereabouts last season as well, which was really nice. And Ed Allen, he's flourishing. I think that year that he signed, we signed him on extra for another 2 years or something. So they got a lot of belief in him, and I think he was one of the names that you picked out last year. But on this list that you've given me, you started with Lance Collard, who is a general forward.
Yeah, so he might be a surprise for Pies because he's linked to West Coast Eagles because the AFL have changed the system. He's free for all. And this guy here gives me real Jamie Elliott vibes. And I know Jamie Elliott isn't getting any younger. He's still a
Yep.
quality player. But I would be looking, if he's on the board around your first pick, I think you'd be amiss not to take him. This kid is pure class. And I think it allows you to play Jamie Elliott a little bit deeper.
Okay.
We know he likes to get involved in the midfield chains. I think Collard could learn off probably the best player at what he does in the league. And Jamie Elliott, as a Carlton fan, it's probably his best game every year. But strong in the air, incredible X factor. I think Graham Wright would love him if he's
Yep.
falls to that pick.
So is he would be one of those guys where it's more of a he's the best at that pick. We need to pick him as opposed to because we did get Lockie Schultz in as that sort of not that sort of Jamie Elliott type, but he can play that sort of role as well. High pressure forward, kicks a bunch of goals. But Lance is one of those guys where if he falls to that pick, we just got to grab him.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like Ed Allen last year.
Yep.
Probably not expected to be at your pick.
Yeah.
Suddenly he is. And I think this kid is better than anyone next year as well. So if people were thinking, I'd look at
Wow.
your forward line. I think he is. Jamie Elliott's the older guy there.
Yep.
I think suddenly you think, okay, let's get the replacement now. and we'll worry about the other positions later, or maybe look in the SSP or something like that for a stopgap forward or defender.
Yep. All right. Well, that's interesting, and I'll have the I've got the highlights playing over here if I can find them. But awesome. So you talked about wanting key defenders, key forwards. The next guy we've got here is Archer Reed. Now Archer Reed, I've seen him in a few phantom drafts around our pick. Some phantom drafts have him going with our pick. Some of them have him going around that pick. So he looks like a guy that isn't going to slide, but will be in and around that pick 19 to 24.
Yeah, this is again what North do. North are going to be very interesting because they're before you, and I think they really do shape the draft in the second round. And I think their picks at the start of the draft, 2 and 3, are going to dictate what they do with their next wave of picks, and that has massive ramifications. And should they not go for a key, I think Archer Reed will be there, and I think Archer Reed is got all the skill sets that make me think, if I'm a Collingwood fan, Brody Majacek is probably one of the best as an undersized player of creating separation. Archer Reed is a big 203 centimetre key forward.
Wow.
He will be learning what already is Brody Majacek's strength every day in training against Darcy Moore, who's incredibly good as well at creating separation and intercept marking. He's a guy here, I think, that if Collingwood select him, when we do the draft in 10 years' time, redo it, we'll say Archer Reed is a top 10 player because of the development at Collingwood. And I think he is, outside of Jed Walters, the most complete key forward in the draft.
So that's a huge wrap on him. Do you think he's not ready to go round one sort of thing, but do you think he's one of those guys that could get a senior game if called upon in that first sort of year?
Yeah, I think by the by, I mean, you look at his measurements, he's an impressive youth. Do you know what I mean? They grow them big down in Gippsland. He's 94 kgs already. So he fits what an AFL footballer is. I think round 12 is about 12 weeks of AFL training and eating steaks. You'd imagine you could easily slot him in the way McStay and Majacek play, with them not being traditionally sized toes, in that third position, like you saw Ash Johnson for Phil, and slot him away and feed him in. But I think if McStay and Majacek stay fit, you can sleep on this guy in the VFL quite easily and deploy him in 2025. But he's a supreme player, and he's definitely going to be a decade-long footballer. He's what all these modern-day forwards are now, quick but big.
That's exciting. We haven't picked up a key in so long, a key that's sort of ready to go. I remember back, I think it was the 2010 draft. We picked up Nathan Brown and Ben Reid, two in the top 10. That was probably one of the biggest things that we've done, and now it's always been midfielders, and that's been Collingwood supporters has griped for so long. It's like, why pick a key forward when you can just pick another inside mid? So this guy Archer Reed sounds absolutely fantastic. As a guy that's ready to go, and we love Majacek. He isn't getting any younger, unfortunately, and we need the next crop to come through, and we just don't have that. We can't trust Nathan Kruger, and that's pretty much it for our tools.
Mate, agreed. And I think this is the draft. I think when you look next year, the key position stocks already, looking at the rankings, and you haven't got a huge selection, and there's maybe going to be a couple that slide into the top 25, 30 conversation. So I do think a lot of clubs around these picks are going to start taking what they know, because that's always a risk. Sometimes it's better to draft what you know now, as opposed to hoping next year someone turns into Max King halfway through the year.
Yeah. The next guy you've got here is Archie Roberts, who is a general defender. We're pretty sound in the defence. Jeremy Howe's not getting any sort of younger. Billy Frampton's more of a key sort of defender. And then if you look at Nathan Murphy's concussion history, does he play if he gets another concussion? So it's good to have that sort of backup. What can you tell us about Archie Roberts?
Archie is really suits. When you watch Collingwood's backline, you wouldn't say that your Quaynors, your Nobles, your Dacoses are supreme defenders. One thing you would say that they're all great at, though, is their endurance, their speed, their run and carry, and their ability to read the play and get you going from defence to attack. And you were one of the best sides in the league last year. And I look, and I think players like IQ, especially Nick Dacos, they're going to be midfielders. They're not going to stay halfback forever. And I think that's how you guys like to develop your players. And
Yep.
then they end the career down there. You look at Pendles went down to halfback. I look at Archie Roberts and say he's the next cab off the rank. He's probably one of the more intelligent players on the field. He looks like he'd be good at a pub quiz as well. Sandy Dragon's boy, so you know it's a good system, but he's got all the skill sets that screams can play round one, halfback,
Wow.
round one, 2025. This guy's pinch hitting in the midfield, and his work around stoppages in the defence is supreme, and that's a strength of Collingwood. And I think if this kid's here and everyone goes the way they are, this is probably the 19th best player with matches.
Yeah. That's a really big rap to say that he'd play round one and then straight back into the midfield the next year. And that sounds like Craig McRae's system as well, where he, like you said, he puts them on halfback, he lets them learn the ropes, and then uses them in the midfield. We've seen that so many times, like you've just pointed out. Another defender you've got here, Charlie Edwards, another general defender.
Yeah, big Charlie. So Charlie here, he's an exciting little talent. Another Sandy Dragons boy, and a little bit bigger bodied, 191. And again, looking at how Fly likes to play his football, he loves his mids to go at high kicking efficiency.
Yep.
This kid here, whatever he sees, he hits with a target. Incredibly clean. Can play down the back. Ended his year in the guts. Interesting enough,
Okay.
and I look at him and I think with his little bit of burst speed and his attributes, working with Pendles could be really exciting because he has got that Pendlebury-like ability to seems like time stands still when he gets the ball. He dances around. And I think learning off Pendles, who in my opinion is the master at having time when there is none, that affects players. And the big talk of him is he's an incredible learner. He's a sponge. His coach talked about that this year. He's a sponge in training. He's learning off one of the masters. And I think, again, he could be a guy that you take a punt on with your first or second pick. If he's there, he's an elite player,
So it sounds like these sort of these kids, obviously, they've all got sort of big raps on them. You have to be when you're in the draft in the first few rounds as well. It sounds like and everyone is going to sort of want these guys, and that's Charlie Edwards to have that. You said he possesses Pendle's like quality. That is going to be a benefit to sort of anyone, and if he falls through to us, maybe with that second pick, which I think is off the top of my head, I think it's 33, which obviously will be pushed back a little bit, but. And he was another general defender, which is kind of what we need. Now we're looking at Logan Morris, who is a key forward. We talked earlier about how we sort of need that key forward, and we talked about Archer Reed. So what can you tell us about Logan Morris?
Well, again, another key forward. This one kind of comes into the Collingwood mantra of tall forwards, and that's not the tallest gentleman, but incredibly quick, incredibly evasive, and elite set shot. He's got, arguably, his kicking technique is, it's like garlic butter dripping off bread. It's that good. It makes you salivate. And do Collingwood stick to that? Collingwood buck the trend. They don't have 210 centimetre forwards. They seem to like having three mid-sized forwards. And is that the mantra they go? Logan Morris would suit that. He's very Brody Myercheck-like in the terms of you look at him and you think, okay, he's going to get eaten up by a 199, 200 centimetre defender, but he kills them because he's too much quick. He's clever on the ground. He's smart. Logan Morris fits that bill if Collingwood wants to just keep doing what they've done and not changing the system too much, which we know, looking at Carlton with Harry and Charlie, it does change your system naturally when you're playing with a big forward.
Yeah. And do you think he's more of a first rounder or a second rounder? Oh, it's not second rounder, sorry. Like more of that first pick, or will we hear more of that second pick?
I think he might sneak to the second pick, especially if North go Archer Reed, which there is rumours with their second of their picks in the second round. I reckon that Logan will get forgotten about, and he's one of them players that is kind of suffering from exposure of the draft, where the AFL become obsessed with the first 10 players, so much so that we talk about what they liked on Instagram. So it's always your benefit. The 20s are a great place to be just because of the way the AFL media coverage, no one
Yeah.
talks about anyone.
Yeah, no, exactly. And going from a key forward to now a key defender, for the first in our sort of chat, we have got Ollie Murphy. What's up with Ollie?
Well, Sandy, of this wonderful club that how the AFL works is when you've got a player like Riley Saunders, anyone outside of them gets forgotten about. And it happened with Nick Dacos. He played with a guy called Cam McKenzie. No one talks about Cam McKenzie, but he was the right-hand man of Nick Dacos throughout his draft year. And Ollie Murphy is another guy that's probably been forgotten about because everyone's obsessed with Connor O'Sullivan as a key defender, and he's starting to slide. And a guy that intercepts incredibly well. He's very strong. His kicking is elite. We know Murphy's got his Nathan Murphy at Collingwood's got his concussion issues. You've never quite nailed that second key defender due to injuries or unlucky. This guy suits Collingwood. Suddenly, Darcy Moore would have a foil who looks to take the game on, and there'd be two of them looking to defend but also hitting them. And Ollie Murphy would take probably a year to get into the facets of playing senior footy week in, week out, but what an incredible talent. And at 200 centimetres and 85 kegs with his mobility would be a real exciting pairing of Ollie Murphy and Darcy Moore moving through the future.
And it kind of sounds like he could also be, just from what you're saying, a Jeremy Howe replacement as well, because Howe is that sort of guy that intercepts and runs through. And Howe might be, I want to say 32 or 33 next season. So he could be one of those guys that learns from Howe and then takes over him.
Yeah, I mean, the wonderful thing about your list, from a list management point of view, is you've got guys who are A grade coming to the end of their careers, but still got 2-3 years in the tank. Yeah. So great players to learn off. Like, can you imagine being a young key defender, learning off Howe, learning off Moore, like what, and then going up against players like Majacek, who is annoying. Like, he's that anomaly where most defenders will think I'm 10 centimeters bigger, but he's so hard to beat because he's smart. So what a great opportunity for you guys to take a punt on a young, aspiring key defender.
And going from one key defender to another, and I'm going to absolutely be terrible at his name. I've got Zane Zakostelsky. Zakostelsky?
Yeah, you nailed it. You see that Maltese background coming in.
As another key defender. What can you tell us about him?
Well, Zane's a really interesting prospect, I find, just because he was talked about a lot about 6 months ago, and then people have kind of forgotten he exists, but he comes from Claremont, who are an incredibly strong junior outfit and a waffle outfit. And what's intriguing about this guy is he can play in the ruck and also has slot forward, and his ability to intercept, his versatility, he's incredibly quick as well. He is scary when you watch him. He is, like Usain Bolt, quick for his size. It doesn't look right. And we know you guys love basketballers. He was a very prolific junior basketballer as well.
Of course he was.
Yeah, and he ran the second fastest time in the 20-meter sprint and the combine. So he's incredibly fast. And this really is an intriguing prospect for you guys, because I look at your ruck, and Darcy Cameron is a very good ruckman, but you don't seem to put a lot of priority on that. You like them to have a secondary job.
Yes,
Zane
definitely.
Instantly has a secondary job and looks like he could have scope to really become a decent second wave ruckman.
And that's something that we have been lacking over the years, pretty much since sort of Grundy started dipping. You would have seen at the start of the year where Mason Cox, Darcy Cameron went down. We had Dan McStay, who was recruited as a key forward, go into the ruck. Billy Frampton, who was recruited as a key defender, go into the ruck. Ash Johnson go into the ruck, because they just weren't trusting Aiden Begg. They just weren't trusting Oscar Steen, which is fair enough because he's still a young kid. So I think if there is anyone that we're sort of going after, a sort of ruck or a ruck hybrid might be the way to go about it.
Yeah, spot on. And I think this guy here, he covers a need for you guys, like a need of a key position player, either end of the ground. But also, like you say, that secondary role really appeals as well for you guys, because it gives you that option. And he's a player that I think is a very talented young boy. And with that pace, it is, you guys play a running game. Not many teams can boast a 196 running machine.
So is he? Would you say that he is equivalent to like a Brody Grundy, who was that sort of running machine in as a
I think
ruckman?
yeah, I think in athletic wise, yeah, he could
Yeah.
be one of them players that you look at and you're like, how is he doing the things he does? Because he's got incredible speed. Like I say, versatility. He's played just about everywhere for Claremont as well. And he's one of
Wow.
them guys that I think Fly will fall in love with because his history at Claremont has been there's an injury. Don't worry, I'll put my hand up to play. I don't
Mr.
care
Fix
where I
It.
play. I'll do a job. So could be one of them players that you turn into like a utility swingman,
Well,
which I think would be an exciting prospect.
which sounds like exactly what we need. Now, this next guy here, Cooper Simpson, who he is the only mid that you've given me a list for, and like I said earlier, Collingwood's whole draft policy, or Collingwood's fans always joke about why go for a key defender or key forward when you can just draft another mid. This guy is a all round mid. Cooper, awesome first name. I don't know why I just love the name Cooper so much, but what can you tell me about him?
Say what, good mate of my channel is old Cooper Simpson, and suffered injury. And his background story, I look at Collingwood and I think that one thing that Graham Wright and McRae have done together is build a list that has attributes that suit the new Collingwood that you want to
Yeah.
be. Guys that are intelligent, mature, learning together. And Cooper had some horrific injuries in his junior year
Okay.
this year, captain of the Dandenong Stingrays. And his backstory of turning up to training early, working with the kids, putting cones out, helping the coaching department, shows the character of a young man who, where many kids sulk and go home, he was fronting up, doing his rehab, but also getting involved and being a cheerleader. And I think that suits the Collingwood ethos. But this kid, when he can play, should be a top, in my opinion, a top 15 player. If he'd
Oh,
played the
well.
full year, we
Yep.
wouldn't be having this conversation. And he's a goal kicking mid that can use both feet, hits targets, but also, like I say, he loves that give and go, which you're synonymous with from the centre bounce, and then he's on the end of it, kicking from 50. I think Cooper is one of the most well-rounded and least talked about players in this draft, and he will be going 20 to 35. And I don't think people will take the punt before 25. I think after that, someone's going to get a bargain. And this is my pick for the bargain buy, the one that we'll talk about in 10 years' time and go, why did we trade this mid? What draft this mid when we could have had this guy?
Wow. And so what injury did he, sorry, did he suffer earlier this season?
So Cooper, he had some leg injuries. He had his knee went halfway through the year,
Uh,
but he returned and showed his finishing ability. His last year, there was talk that this kid could be a top 10, top 5 even.
wow.
It's kind of what happens. We've seen it with players like Brody Kemp. If you remember at Carlton,
Yep,
he
yep.
got injured and was like a top 5. And it's just been real bad luck injuries with him. But the amazing thing about him is he's back now, he's back training, he's fully fit. And I think some teams are going to make some mistakes with these injuries and forgetting about him.
Interesting. So he's one of those guys where even if we wanted a key defender, if he's there at pick 22 or whatever it turns out to be, taking him is what you would do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if he's there, I'd maybe, if I was Collingwood and say Archer's there, I'd fill my need first.
Hmm.
But I've got a sneaky feeling that Cooper's going to really slide because I just think that this draft is littered with mids and mid forwards.
Yep.
That is going to warp some of the other picks. And you've already seen it. Colton Bulstrop, who I did link to Collingwood when I did my
Yep.
first mock draft, he's now been invited to the first round night, which is an illusion that someone is taking him a
He's
little bit
taking,
earlier than
yeah.
we thought. So I think that might help Collingwood, Cal, and then these teams in the middle tier because that means someone's sliding.
Interesting. All right. And look, the last two guys we've got here is something that we just talked about earlier with our rucks. These guys are pure rucks, Mitch Edwards and Taylor Goad. We'll start with Mitchy Edwards. Is he the next Tim English?
This one blags my head that people hate this guy so much in the AFL draft. This guy was arguably the best ruck last year when we did our rankings. And still, to me, outside of Ethan Reid, The only difference between him and Ethan Reid is Ethan Reid's a dual position player in a Gold Coast Academy. I think this kid is incredible. And I look at him and he is the modern day ruckman. Quality around the ground, his work rate down back. He does that Max Gorn thing where he slides in the hole off the ball and almost becomes an extra defender, which is the modern day way that we see Tim English play Max Gorn.
Yep.
We see Luke Jackson do the opposite and play forward. Strong in the air. His ruck craft is elite. He already looks like a pure ruckman. And when I look at your ruck stocks, I know you've got a few guys there. You've got Steen and Begg, who are like development players. And you just never know with them. I look at Mitch and think already he's the second best ruck at your club behind Darcy Cameron. And I think that goes for a lot of clubs. I think that goes for when people say, oh, we've got 3 ruckmen. Why do we want 4? I say, ignore that. He's better than what you've got. I think Carlton, look at him. We've got a lot of rucks, but he's already better than what you've got. So sometimes you've got to take it. And we know these guys take ages to develop. We know that they're not going to play tomorrow. And I think you're in a position where you don't really need a ruckman to play tomorrow. But if he's here, and let's say 2 years' time, he's ready to play. And I think English was a great simile. I think this guy could be a top 10 ruckman in the league.
Whoa.
Do you want to be that team that ignores him, and then 2 years you're trying to get a Matty Flynn type ruckman on an emergency when you could have had this guy who's an A-grade ruckman? He is supreme. And I think that's the one thing Collingwood don't have. They don't have a proper ruckman. Like I say, Darcy Cameron, good, but I don't think he's elite, where Mitch Edwards could be elite. That's
really interesting because that is one of our deficits in and around the club, is that pure, Gorn, Grundy as well, you may as well say, Tim English sort of ruckman. So now how does he compare to the last guy on your list, Taylor Goad?
Well, Taylor Goad is, like, knowing how right he works at Collingwood, he likes to spring a surprise. And he likes elements. When you've seen him at Fremantle, you've seen him at Collingwood, he likes a point of difference. He's smarter than the average bear. And Taylor Goad is, I have never seen someone 206 centimetres run as quick as he does. His time for a 20-metre sprint at the Combine was 2.9 seconds, which is lightning. And if you watch his highlights as well, that there's full games from South Adelaide on there. When he breaks from a stoppage, 206 centimetres, 97 kgs of the kid. It looks like someone's edited the footage. He's that fast. And he loves using the ball. He loves getting the ball. He loves trying to take the game on. It needs sharpening up and it needs honing in. But I think that's the strength of Collingwood's coaching. They really do put time into the basics. But this kid here, if he can get that sorted, his ball use, and get his foot intelligence up, there's no ruckman like this in the league. And this could be the way we're going. For some reason, call it evolution, call it whatever it is, humans are getting taller, quicker, smarter, faster. I can see ruckman being like Taylor Goad in 10 years, a bit like Dean Cox revolutionized ruckman, and then Max Gorn. Everyone's Max Gorn now, a midfielder who's 200. I think the next evolution is line-breaking ruckman, and Taylor Goad could be the first of his kind who takes the ball out of the ruck with a roll of the change, and he's gone. And I tell you, watch some of the highlights. Midfielders can't catch him. He's faster than midfielders, and 206, 97 kgs of wrecking ball. That's tasty. That
is almost on par with you saying that watching Nick Dacos play was like listening to the Beatles for the first time. You're saying Taylor Goad is the evolution of ruckman, and he could be that next link in the chain after that Max Gorn. That's big raps, Pom.
When I watched Nick Dacos play football, I had tears in my eyes. When I watch Taylor Goad play football, I question everything I know about human evolution. It doesn't look right. And honestly, I'm not doing it justice. It is. If you told me he was an alien, I'd believe it, because I have never seen someone that big run that fast. Like, it is uncanny how quick he runs. And I just think if I was a recruiter and I had a system like Collingwood, I'd be thinking, we can get this kid's football smarts. What imagine a midfield that has a kid that can take the ball and outpace midfielders, keep up with Nick Dacos, keep up with them players. we could be unbeatable. And I just think Taylor Gordy's going to be the one that people sleep on in the draft, just because he is raw, but his ruck work's pretty solid. And that point of difference, there's no ruck like it.
And that can come with training. That can come with 2 years in the system. That raw athletic ability, that running that you're talking about, that you can't train that. You can train ruck taps. But what you're
Mate,
talking about
yeah,
is insane.
you can train any idiot to kick. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that hard, but like you can't teach to be 209 centimeters tall, can you? You can't teach to be 97 kgs of pure muscle. You can't teach being that big and that fast. Like, that's not something that we can put you on a diet program and suddenly you quit,
Yeah, exactly.
unfortunately. So that's something that I think Graham Wright looks at. He looks at facets and attributes and then backs himself to teach these guys to do the basics.
So, Pom, you've given me these 10 guys and you've given me all these amazing write-ups, all these insane words and, aliens and bloody guys who've got IQ as big as Pendles. Who are you taking with our first two picks? So obviously at the moment, 1933, they're going to get pushed out a little bit. Who are your Graham Wright in the chair? Your Derek Hine. Who are you taking? Because I dare say we won't be taking more than two kids in the national draft. So who are you sort of picking?
I think in a dream world, if Collingwood get everything to go their way, I think if they can end up with Archer Reed and let's give you Mitch Edwards. I think if you can go Archer Reed, Mitch Edwards, I think Collingwood will look at the draft next year that is littered with midfielders and halfbacks that they'll go, look, let's get the job done today and let's never
Yep.
worry about that again. And we'll focus on 2024.
Yeah, so you're saying Archer Reed, Mitch Edwards in an absolute perfect society where everything sort of falls into their place. And just out of curiosity, who have you got with Carlton's first couple picks?
Oof, God, that's tough. With Carlton's picks, if God is gracious to my Blue Boys, I would absolutely adore. I would adore Charlie Edwards and Ashton Moore. I'd love them two boys there. I feel like they suit Carlton's needs.
So we can only cross our fingers that Santa brings us what we want for draft Christmas, right?
Mate, hopefully drafter clause is fair to row.
Fingers crossed. Pommy, thank you so much for this and everything that you do for the AFL community, for the content creation community as well. Like I said, I'm not just saying this because you're one of my good mates, but honestly, second to none. You just keep smashing it. And when I know when I don't know fuck all. So that's why I get you on to kind of to tell me what I don't know, and this has been very insightful, and hopefully we can look back on this in 2 weeks and say, look, man, he's talked about this guy, we've picked them up, and Pommy he should be sitting in the recruiter's chair.
Hey, I think some Carlton fans would hate me if I ever had the Collingwood polo and was their list manager. But
Well, what can you do, mate? You gotta bring in the big bucks.
you gotta, hey, the mortgage needs paying.
Exactly right, Pom. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate you.
Cheers, mate. Much love.
Thanks, brother. Bye. Uh, I always don't know where the end recording fucking button is. It always moves. Oh, here.